Hey guys, what's up? This is Thomas, and this is a review of the Squire Paranormal series Toronado. This is an interesting guitar I've been watching for a while in the marketplace. Decided to finally get one myself and see how I liked it. And I gotta say, truth be told, I'm not the biggest fan of it, and I'll tell you why in this review. So, the Squire Paranormal series Toronado, which I'm no longer going to say, I'm just going to say the Toronado. Let's go over some of the specs first, and then we'll go from there. The body itself is a poplar body made out of a really, really light wood. I actually have no problem with poplar. It's great for your back. It has a poly finish, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Once you've had nitro, you'll understand. The pickups in this are unique. They're made by Fender. They're called their atomic humbucking pickups, and they have a lot more higher output than a standard pickup, which is supposed to be specific to this guitar style. Two volume knobs, two tone knobs with gnarled flat knobs. These are different. This was bought used, and somebody had changed them out. From here we go to the neck. The neck is a maple neck. Not too bad looking. Got some knots in it, which I'm a fan of. Knots in the body as well, by the way, which is pretty cool. Makes it a little bit more distinctive, in my opinion. 9.5 inch radius on this bad boy. Bolt on neck, 4 bolts on the back there. The fretboard itself is Indian Laurel, which is a pretty awesome material, in my opinion. I like it a lot more than like the Pal Faro that's out there, or however you pronounce it. I definitely would prefer this over that for sure if I wasn't getting rosewood or ebony. From there we have a C-shaped neck, as they're calling it, which is definitely a thicker C-shaped neck. Synthetic bone nut over here. 22 narrow tall frets, which I actually like these in particular. And then the thing that makes this most distinctive is the 24.75 inch scale length here. So it's much more of like a Gibson scale length if you're used to that. How do I feel about this guitar? I was really excited to get it. I watched a lot of videos on it. From what I saw, I was a big fan. And then I have to say, I got it home. First, the person who owned it before that has not taken care of it. There's a lot of rust over here, which you can't see. But a lot of rust on it. The strings were absolutely... I popped the high E string almost immediately. So I had to do a little bit of work on it. Nothing too crazy. But it wasn't a good start. So finally got it all plugged in. I get it all set up, turn it on, get some clean tones. And I don't know, there was something about the neck. The neck feels pretty cheap in my opinion, kind of like one of the cheaper Squires from back in the day, if you've ever had any of like the old Bullets or anything. Depending on how far you go back. I'm talking about like early 2000s Bullets. I don't know. I felt the neck is just a little bit cheap feeling, and its thickness and the quality of it itself. The frets are actually not too bad. There's just things about it that I was surprised. About. I could still be surprised. So let's go over the review. It's a solid guitar. I would recommend this to somebody looking for an entry-level guitar. It feels cheap in some ways, and it doesn't in others. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that's just the way it is. When it comes to the neck, that's probably my least favorite feature of the guitar. It feels, in my opinion, pretty cheap. It feels like one of those cheaper early 2000s Squire Bullets, that kind of cheap material. The finish, the poly finish, is a little nicer than on what was back then, which was probably a satin. But I don't know, when I play it, there's something about it that you could tell a cheaper neck from a nicer neck. I guess once you've had nicer necks, it's hard to go back. And that's the case with this one, at least in my humble opinion. It definitely feels like a cheaper Squire, and if you've ever had a classic vibe, you'll definitely notice the difference. The classic vibe neck actually is pretty nice, and you'd be surprised that they're both from China. Not to say China makes bad guitars, but I definitely will say I would definitely choose a classic vibe neck to switch out if I had the option, which would take away that really cool scale length that this has. But at the end of the day, that's what's more important to you, how the neck feels or a cool scale length. With the tuners, they're not too bad. I'm getting the EB. With the tuners, E, A, D, and high E pretty much staying in tune. Running into some issues with the G and the B strings, which are standard issues with a cheaper guitar. Now, is that the nut not being cut right? I don't think so in this case. The nut seems to be pretty decent. What I think it really is, to be honest, is just cheap tuners. There's nothing, no branding even on it. I'm gonna sneeze. Ah, bless me, right? So yeah, the tuners themselves, they're a little cheap, and I would definitely highly recommend switching them out right away. When it comes to the pickups, I gotta say I don't like the clean tone that it provides, which you're not gonna hear it too well, but it already kind of sounds out of tune, and I just tuned this, which is the crazy part. I don't like the clean tones. When distorted with something like a tube screamer, I think that you get a lot better quality out of them. Surprisingly, this thing rocks if you're doing some pop punk and things like that, as long as you're not going crazy on the gain. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of the tones that I'm getting out of clean tones going through my Fender Mustang amp. I'm using a jazz chorus amp styled preset, and I built all my presets myself. I'm just not a fan of what this guy is putting out. When it comes to the frets are actually not too bad. I haven't really run into any issue with that at all, to be honest. That's actually nicer than some of the other guitars that I've owned. So that I've not really had any trouble with. There was 2 frets over here. You could see that there was some fret wear, but again, it's a used guitar. So I had to do a little sanding it down a little bit. Nothing too crazy, and I got it fine. We'll go through the playthrough. I'll play some clean tones. I'll play some distorted tones. And then I'll go through and do maybe some modulated tones as well, just for you to get an example of what it sounds like. And then we'll go from there. Now, you may see a change in what I'm wearing. I filmed the tones earlier in the day, just because it's later now at night. So if you see that change, just understand that this is the first video, and what am I going to do about it, right? That's just the way it is. All right, so let's give the overall thoughts on this guitar. Overall, I think it's a fine guitar. I think it's a great entry level guitar. I think it's a great modding platform if you want to throw some new stuff in there. If I was going to keep this, which I'm not, I think some of the things I would do right off the bat would be changing out the tuners for something like some Grover locking tuners, get them for less than $100. Pickups, even though they're cool, I'd probably keep them, but I wouldn't keep them in this guitar. I'd probably use them for something else. I think that maybe some burst buckers, some Gibson burst buckers would sound really cool in this as well. I would change these out. I don't really like these. Two of them are loose, and two of them are really nice and tight. So I don't know. I've tried to tighten them. They won't stay. So yeah, that's right there. 1, 2, 3 items that I would change. And then if I really wanted to get crazy, I might change the neck, which would obviously change the scale, but maybe a telly neck. That'd be kind of cool with this. Or Jazzmaster neck, maybe a little more length. Even maybe a Jag, I don't know. But then of course I just made it a Jag. It's not really paranormal anymore. So maybe a telly, right? Keep it kind of weird, even though they have a paranormal series just like that as well. I would definitely replace some things, though. I would not keep it the way it is. Just for my taste, it's not right out the box, not or right out the used box. Not something I would really want to keep playing. If I was just doing some pop punk stuff, maybe a show or something where I'm not going to use too much clean, then by all means, this thing's going to do fine. You're going to be tuning it per every song, at least this model of it. But that's not a big deal. And then who cares, right? It's pop punk. Who gives a crap? If I'm going to rate this, which I haven't built a rating system, but we're filming, so we're going to have one. I would say 5 out of a 10. It is not the worst guitar by any means. It is not the best guitar by any means. It's right in the middle. At least that's how I feel about it. As far as playability goes, I think it plays fine. If you're a church player, would you want to bring this to church? I think that you would want to do at least change out the tuning pegs and really learn to dial in your sounds to get something, maybe more compression on a clean tone. You might be able to push through it, but I don't think it's that kind of guitar. It's definitely much more of a fun, it's meant for rocking out. That's obviously why it's got these high output pickups, these atomic pickups. So yeah, that's definitely something I would do with that. So yeah, overall, 5 out of 10. Would I recommend it? I would recommend it to an entry-level player. I'd recommend it to somebody looking to do mods. I think it'd be really fun to do. If you are really interested, party, yeah. If you're a real player's player, no, not really. This is, it's not for you. It's not for you. And it's not for me. So a little disappointed, but that's the whole point of what I'm doing. The buy sell trade type deal that I do, so I can get guitars like this in my hands when I'm very fascinated. I spend hours staring at them, watching videos, trying to find out like if I'm gonna like it, if it's my sound. Always searching for the thing that's my sound, and I was not pleasantly surprised on this one. So that's part of the game though, and that's why you do it. So thanks for checking out the review. If you want, do the thing, because I'm not going to tell you to do the thing. I'm not going to describe it. You know what it is. It's YouTube. Do the thing, and I'll wait. You ever notice that an Apple iPhone camera kind of looks like an owl when you stare at it, like real big eyes? Looks like it's hooing. Ooh. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for being a part of this guitar thing. This guitar thing of ours. It's ours together. My name is Thomas. I'm your host. Thanks, man. Have a good one. I just stand here and wait. I just sit here. Do I like play something? We're done.